Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour being brought to you by good friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf. Online, sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory. Great pre-owned inventory with the all-important Sunbury Motors guarantee. Terrific service department, whether it's quick lane, inspections, routine, difficult, they handle it all. At Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf. And online, sunburymotors.com. The crowd last night was not chanting Free Scott for Free Scott Lauber. They were chanting Free Nick Castellanos. But because he's free anyway, we have Scott Lauber with us now. Welcome, sir.
Hey, Steve. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, crazy scene last night with the ballpark. They're chanting free Nick. So what do you know about the incident that Rob Thompson felt there was a need to take away some playing time to send a message?
Yeah, so to be clear, I'm not in Miami. A colleague of mine is there covering this series for us. But from her reporting and from what I've read and from what I've been able to ascertain on my own, you know, it sounds like it was fairly straightforward. Rob Thompson decided recently that as long as they're in this string of facing a lot of right-handed starting pitching, which means they have Yohan Rojas on the bench, right, that he would utilize Rojas in kind of a defensive replacement sort of role late in games, which they had a lead. And he says he told Nick Castellanos as much, Castellanos being the one that would come out of the game, moving Max Kepler to right, putting Rojas in center, and moving Brandon Marsh to left. It makes a lot of sense. It's something we've asked Rob Thompson about a lot in recent years. You know, would you consider moving, taking Castellanos out for defense? Not something he's wanted to do because he doesn't want to risk losing the bat if he needs it late in the game. But like I said, I mean, they're in this run now of righties, and to get Rojas a little bit of playing time and to get the best defensive outfield in the out there late in games, this is what he wants to do. So Monday night was the first opportunity he really had to do that. I think they had a 2-run lead. He decides to take Castellanos out. Castellanos doesn't like it. He says something to Rob Thompson in the dugout that apparently was beyond just, I disagree with your decision. He said something that Rob Thompson found to be objectionable and disrespectful. I think the word he used was inappropriate. Yep. And what's a manager to do in that situation, right? You can do one of two things. You can turn the other cheek and, maybe send a message you don't want to send to the rest of the team, which is that the manager can be walked over or the manager can be spoken to in a way that's not respectful, or you could take action. So he decided to take action, sit him out for a game. It was notable for a few reasons. Number one, Nick Castellanos had this consecutive game streak going, 236 consecutive starts and games that's now over. That was one reason. Number two, Castellanos is from Miami, really enjoys playing down there, has a lot of family at games when he plays there. So you take him out in front of in his hometown. But, Rob Thompson wanted to send a message. As far as I know, it's over and done with, right? Punishment delivered and served, and now they move forward. But, we're certainly going to watch for the next time that the situation arises that they can remove him late in the game and see what happens.
Oh, I was at Fenway Park the night in 1988, for goodness sake, Scott, when Joe Morgan was the manager of the Red Sox, and he pinch hit for Jim Rice. And Jim Rice, and I had the perfect angle looking in the dugout, and Rice is going at it with him in the dugout. Now, did it pay off? No. The Red Sox won the game. But to me, you have to let managers manage, and everybody has a role, and the role is for the manager to manage, and that's what he thought was the best way to win the game. I don't see any issue on Rob Thompson's end.
Yeah, I think we've all been in a situation where we've worked for a boss who makes a decision that we don't agree with.
Right.
But you can't go marching into your boss's office and disrespect that person or undermine them or do anything inappropriate, to get back to that word that Rob Thompson used. And so, not without repercussions. If you march into your boss's office and say, how dare you do this to my show, they're going to say, well, you're off the air for a day, and you're going to have to live with that punishment. Same with me. So, I think we've all been in that situation where we just have to sort of, agree to disagree or keep it to ourselves or whatever. Right. And Castellanos decided not to do that. Now, to his credit, he did speak to reporters yesterday before the game. He did say he's the manager. I'll abide by, if he wants to sit me for a day, he makes the decisions. He did own up to the fact that he said something that Rob Thompson thought crossed the line. Now, he didn't apologize for it or say, yeah, he's right, I was out of line. He simply said, I disagreed with his decision. He thought I went over the line. He's the manager. He makes these decisions. So, again, I think it's probably over and done with, at least until the next time that it comes up. And we'll see what Rob Thompson does and how Nick Castellanos reacts. And, I'd like to think that lesson learned here, right, that for the best. And, I keep thinking about years ago, covering the Phillies in their last glory era, golden era. Pat Burrell used to get pulled for defense all the time.
Yes.
And, Pat Burrell never objected to it. I'm sure he didn't like it. He has made jokes about it since, about being replaced for defense and all of those things. But I'm sure he didn't love it. But that was what Charlie Manuel wanted to do, to get his best defense out there with a lead. It happens a lot, and Castellanos isn't the first guy to have that happen. It does not diminish the fact that he works really hard on his defense. I see him out there before most every game, before batting practice, working on it with Paco Figueroa, the outfield coach, but it does not change the fact that he's a below-average outfielder defensively, and if you have the opportunity to put your best outfield out there, it does not include him in the late innings. And so I sort of agree with the move Rob Thompson made, and I think if Castellanos thinks about it, and if he's honest about it, he'd probably agree, too, that that was the best outfield alignment late in the game.
All right, so, look, we're going to get to the point here. Now, the Red Sox have already dealt Devers, but there will be other people over the next 5 weeks that will be dealt. The Phillies, of course, would be in the prime area of buyers. Give me an area or two where they need to consider buying. Yeah,
there are definitely buyers. I don't think I could be proven wrong here, but I don't think we're going to have a player the caliber of Rafi Devers, especially a hitter the caliber of Rafi Devers, who changes teams between now and July 31st. That was, I think, a unique situation there that had become untenable, and Boston felt like they had to move him. But there are going to be players who do move between now and July 31st, and I think if there are two areas that the Phillies need to look at, it's the bullpen and possibly looking for another hitter. Where would that come from? Most likely it would come in the outfield if they were to add another hitter. So, I asked someone the other day in the press box, if you had to get one thing and one thing only, which one would it be? And we both agreed that, this was another writer, we both agreed that, 10 days or so, 2 weeks ago, we would have said bullpen without hesitation. Mm-hmm. And I still think I would say that. I still think I would say it's the bullpen, and they need at least one, possibly two arms out of the bullpen between now and the deadline. Doesn't mean a closer per se, but definitely a late inning guy who can come in with a lead late and be trusted with that lead. I think it's a little closer now than it was before, just because I've seen the offense struggle a little bit, and the offense in the outfield, specifically left and center field, has been so lacking. I think you can get away with one of those spots being mostly a defensive spot, but not both. But I do still think it's bullpen. I still think that's their priority heading towards July 31st, and I think they'll end up with another reliever who can join Orion Kerkering and Jordan Romano and Matt Strahm in kind of the circle of trust, so to speak, for Rob Thompson in the late innings with a lead.
When you make a move like this, or moves like this, could be multiple, you need assets to do it. So beyond the assets on the major league team, do they have enough assets that are interesting to other teams out there in their minor league system, or is that lacking?
Oh, I think they have enough. It's just going to be a matter of how far do you want to go? How many chips do you want to push into the middle of the table to get that deal done? They have stopped. They have drawn a line at Andrew Painter, certainly, and I think they still will. I think he's basically untouchable. They've mostly drawn a line at Aiden Miller and Justin Crawford. Although when they talked about Garrett Crochet at the deadline last year, I think they were a little more willing for a starter of that caliber with control, a little more willing to talk Miller and Crawford. I think, again, it would have to be a player they could control beyond this year. It wouldn't be for a rental kind of situation. But that's really the question, I think, that looms over all of this for the next 5.5, 6 weeks, which is, you are built to win it. Dave Dombrowski has been very upfront about saying it might be the last shot for this core as a group, because there might be some subtractions or some changes to the core beyond this year, just by virtue of contracts expiring and whatnot. So, how far do you go to strike that balance between a team that's all in and a team that wants to, be all in, but also not mortgage its future too much? So I would think that it's going to be a similar deadline to last year. I think they'll trade second and third tier prospects. I don't think they'll trade from that top tier of 2 or 3. Certainly Painter, Miller, and probably Crawford. But I think anyone else is probably on the table. And the farther away they are from the majors, I think the more likely they are to go. So, they traded Starlin Caba in the offseason for Jesus Luzardo. Caba is 18 years old, 19 years old. He's a shortstop. He's in the lower minors. He is years and years away. I think that's the kind of player that they might look to move. Short of that, a second or third tier guy in AA or AAA could go. But I think other than the top 3, they'll probably entertain any of those players.
So, Scott, obviously the Mets are right there. So what's your impression of the Mets? Everybody wants to talk about Soto. What do you think of that team, and do they have something in them that can threaten not just the Phillies, but threaten the Dodgers, threaten the Padres, threaten the Giants even?
Yeah, look, I looked at the Mets when the season started, and I thought, do they have enough starting pitching?
Yeah.
And here we sit, 3 months into the season, and they not only have had enough, but they've had real quality. I haven't looked in the last few days, but they've been among the league leaders in rotation ERA really from the beginning of the season. So and that's without Sean Manaea, and it's without Frankie Montas. So, kudos to the group of Griffin Canning and Clay Holmes and Tyler McGill, and until recently Kodai Senga, who just got hurt. Now they're going to have to make do without him for about a month or so, I think. Kudos to that group, really, for doing what they've done. I thought all along that the Mets would hit, and they have hit, and that's without Soto as peak Soto. He's starting to look more and more like peak Soto, which is a scary thought when you put him in a lineup with Lindor, with Alonso, who's had a really, really good year after being out on the free agent market for as long as he was. He certainly looks like he's, in another contract year, trying to make sure that when he goes back out there on the market, he has an easier time of it this time around. I think they can really hit. I think that they probably still do need a starting pitcher before the deadline. I think they, as good as their starters have been, I think they probably need some bullpen help, in particular a lefty I think the Phillies need a lefty reliever as well. And so, I could see somebody out there like Aroldis Chapman, right? Veteran reliever with postseason experience who throws 100 still, even at age 37, who's been through pennant races before. And I could see a team like the Red Sox sitting there and going, well, let's see what the Phillies will give us. Let's see what the Mets will give us. And maybe we can have good old-fashioned NL East bidding war for Aroldis Chapman and maybe extract a few prospects from a team to get him. I think he would help both teams. So I think the Mets have been really impressive in what they've been able to do with their pitching. And they will get Minaya back. They will get Montas back. Those guys will be a big help. But I think, for as good as they've been, they could probably add another starter there, and you feel that much better about them if they're able to do that.
Everybody knows and sees, what the Dodgers did in the offseason. They're seeing some of the fruits of it right now. In reality, as you look at it, how balanced is the National League, actually? Is it far more balanced maybe than people realize?
It's definitely the better of the two leagues. There's no doubt about that.
No doubt.
I think over in the American League, you've got, the Tigers and the Yankees and then everybody else. And, you could argue the Tigers and Yankees would be behind the Dodgers, the Mets, and the Phillies, and then if they were in the National League in terms of just quality of roster, quality of team. So
yep.
It is definitely the better of the two leagues, and I do think there's a lot of balance there. Like the Phillies have played, the Brewers, for example, came to town a few weeks ago. They looked like a team that was struggling, that might be a 500 team or a little worse than that. That could be a difficult road for them to get into the postseason. They come here and they sweep the Phillies. The Phillies, the Cubs come into town playing really well. The Phillies take 2 out of 3 from them. The Giants just got Rafi Devers. They're going to be, they're already having a really nice season, hanging in there with the Dodgers, and they'll only be better for it for getting Devers in their lineup. I think the Padres are still a very, very good team. Obviously, you have the Dodgers, you have the Mets, you have the Phillies. Over in the Central, you've got the Cubs. The Cardinals are hanging in. The Brewers are hanging in. The Reds are kind of pesky, right? They're not a pushover for anyone.
Right.
So I think it's eight or 9 teams for 6 spots in the National League playoff race, and I don't know. I mean, between now and July 31st, a couple of them will probably fall by the wayside a little bit or fade. Don't count out the Diamondbacks either. I know they lost Corbin Burns, but they've signaled that they're still going to try to go for it. We'll see what that looks like come All-Star break or end of July. But, that's a lot of good to really good teams in the National League that I think still look at it in the middle of June and say, we have a chance.
Well, I mean, if I made a point to somebody last year at the World Series that said, no offense, the Yankees probably would have finished 4th in the West last year.
Yeah.
I mean
yeah.
And
look, everyone in both leagues, I think this is what unfortunately, the third wild card has, I think, I don't know what the right word is, watered down the trade deadline a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, just look at last year, right? This time last year, Phillies had just come back from London, basically, more or less. And the Mets were talking about, I was there for that series in London, and the Mets were talking about, who would they unload at the trade deadline? And then they get insanely hot for 3.5 months, make the playoffs, and wind up in the NLCS. So everyone in the National League is saying we could be last year's Mets. We could be the 2022 Phillies, who are the last team in and win the pennant. We could be the 86-win Diamondbacks in 2023, who are the last team in and kind of back in and end up in the World Series. So, lots of examples in both leagues. The Tigers last year, right, get really, really hot, come out of nowhere, and they're sort of a Cinderella team down the stretch that makes the postseason. And all of these teams that are like kind of in the mix but have had their struggles are looking at it and going, why can't we do that? And so I think because of that, it causes the teams to delay any decision to sell at the deadline, and then you get right down to it, and then some teams decide, all right, it's just not going to click for us, and some teams hold even at the deadline and say, we're not waving the white flag, we're not going to give it up, so give up the fight. So, as exciting as the third wild card has kind of made things, it also has sort of, I think, made teams a little bit less eager to deal and to do so early.
Yeah, I always say it brings with it a gray area as to whether I'm really a contender or not, even though, what was it, the 2014 World Series? You had, now they weren't third wild cards, but you had the wild card winners, the Giants and the Royals, play each other.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it can happen.
There was always a sense, there was always a feeling, I think, once the playoffs were expanded that, it used to be, and I think we've talked about this, I still think winning your division over the course of 162 is the hardest team thing to achieve in the game, harder than winning the World Series. But, the fact that there are more avenues into the playoffs now, it sort of diminishes winning your division. So I've always thought getting in is kind of half the battle, and once you're in, anything can happen. Right. And really, with the expanded wild card, it's even more amplified. So just get in the tournament, and you can get hot at the right time. And like I said, those teams, I mean, the last 3 NL pennant winners were wild card teams that were either the last or second to last team in. Right. So anything can happen.
My friend, thank you so much. Appreciate it. That was a great conversation. You're always terrific. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Anytime.
That's Scott Lauber joining us. Back with more in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
School's out, the grill's fired up, and your summer adventures are just getting started. Whether it's a beach trip, a ball game, or just running the kids to practice, Sunbury Motors Ford has the vehicle to get you there. Choose from over 20 Bronco Sports, roomy, rugged, and ready, with savings up to $8,278 and prices starting at just $29,483. Want efficiency and space? Grab one of 24 fuel-sipping 2025 Ford Escapes, discounted up to $5,769 and starting at only $28,352. Need a muscle from the boat or camper? Check out 35 Ford F-150s, America's bestseller, with savings just under $11,000, starting at $46,579. No pressure, no gimmicks, just real deals for real families in Central PA. Sunbury Motors Ford, coming alive in 2025. In the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury.